I really wish people knew that our generation, we're doing some amazing work. We are out here making changes, making moves, working to make moves, and we're doing it with a fresh heart and a non-judgmental heart. And that's really what, at least the people I've met in my generation, are about. We're all about working towards goodness, working towards making strides, working towards changing the world for the better. And we realize the wrong, and we're not just realizing it, but we're acting upon it and doing something about it.
Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Ulrich, and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, where you're going to hear from people in an enormous wave of goodness and progress well underway in the world that almost no one knows enough about yet. Okay, today's guest, Kiarra Lucas, is one of the most remarkable young women I have ever had the pleasure to meet. It's kind of serendipitous, this story, and I'll always encourage you to leave room for serendipity in your life from examples just like this. I was at an innovation event in Burlington, Vermont, a couple of weeks ago. And at lunch, I was sitting on a park bench next to a nice young woman, and I just picked up a conversation with her. And today we are interviewing that young woman on the podcast because her attitude about this future, about how having a positive attitude can change the opportunities that come your way, it's stunning. And Kiarra has an amazing story that I think is a reminder to us all that we should not necessarily accept the limitations or the limiting beliefs in our minds about what's possible. Kiarra grew up in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in and around Washington, D.C. And yet here she is, a freshman at Champlain College, a well-known tech institution where she's going to have all kinds of opportunity to realize her big dream. And yes, she has a big dream for this world that can change the future for many. So I want you to enjoy this episode. It's going to give you faith in the next generation for sure. And I'm pretty sure Kiarra's inner light will come through for you and you will leave this episode changed. Kiarra's journey involves really making the most of absolutely every single opportunity that came her way. And she started that in middle school. She was the daughter of a single mom, and her father was incarcerated when she was 4. And she lost her father shortly after he was released when she was just 14. So Kiarra has made her way in the world. She's got a marvelous story. I hope it inspires you to find all the opportunity in your life and never miss the occasion to make the world a better place for yourself and others. Enjoy. I have to tell you, it seems almost surreal the way I'm talking to you now, just 4 days after we met. Tell us about your story, because it very quickly into our just normal chat. Oh, what brings you here? Da, da, da. I found so many things to be full of wonder in your story. So please share with us how we come to know each other and start as far back as you like.
Yeah, so I in my first year at Champlain College, and this school has brought me a lot of different opportunities, some of which I haven't been able to participate in, but this innovation event particularly, I was able to go. So it was free for me as a student. It was something in me that really wanted to go. One of the topics that I got emailed about was innovation in education, and I've always been interested in what they do in education now, especially with all these new technologies and things like that. So I was actually curious the most about talking about innovation in education. And I knew this was a great opportunity because the conversations that were being had were things I was always thinking about, but never had the opportunity to really discuss with others or to even listen from professionals in these fields that are experiencing these new innovations.
Yeah, I think that I recognize right off that you were the kind of curious person that would have some marvelous big ideas and some big dreams. And I know you're going to learn a lot in the next 4 years, and this could develop into go anywhere. But tell us what you said when I talked to you about what your passion was and your big idea.
Yeah, so my big goal really is to create an advertisement and marketing firm that hires those who are formerly incarcerated and also offers internships to those who are at risk youth. And this passion is just something that was invoked in me because advertisement and marketing, it allows you to realize the benefits of creativity. Oftentimes people are told that, oh, you can't be an artist because it's not going to get you anywhere. But oftentimes there are a lot of different careers that you can use arts and creativity in. So advertisement and marketing has just been a passion of mine because I love to promote and I love to advertise and I love all the things about marketing and advertisement. But also choosing to employ those who are formerly incarcerated comes from a personal standpoint. My father was formerly incarcerated. He was arrested, I think, when I was around the age of 4 or 5. So I had very vague memories of him being with me before he was incarcerated. But I think after he got out, it was my last year of middle school. So I was in the eighth grade. It was the summer of my eighth grade year. And he got out and he still struggled with the same things. He wasn't able to get a job. So he just all he could do really was just sit in the same neighborhood that caused him to get in trouble in the first place. And a lot of employers immediately look at someone who's been in prison and automatically deny them. Or there's often a lot of times where they're in prison and they're in for a while, even short periods of time, and they fall behind in skill sets that may be needed in the current way of the workforce. So a lot of innovations in technology expand so quickly so that there people in prison are often left behind in those innovations because we don't find it important for them to enter and know about the world that's happening because we're all at the end of the day living in the same world. And at the end of the day, people make mistakes that cause them to serve time, but they shouldn't still be serving time if they're allowed to get out and be a part of that world. And then the at risk youth thing, I want to hire and provide internships to those who are at risk youth because a lot of the times, and this hit me over the summer, it was last summer that I was working at a summer camp in my neighborhood. So I'm from Washington, D.C., by the way. And in D.C., everybody knows it for the capitals and the monuments and the White House and all the Congress and all the fancy terms. But the residents of DC are often neglected, especially those born and raised in DC. There's a lot of struggles that go on in the neighborhoods. Some may hear about Southeast DC, Northeast DC. Mainly the parts where there aren't a lot of tourist attractions are often the parts where there's a lot of gun violence. And it's happening in people my age group, people in high school, and even middle schoolers are getting killed by other like there's a lot of issues within our neighborhoods. And it hit me when I was working at that summer camp that a lot of the kids, they're giving short sighted views on what they can do for their future. I was blessed to be able to go to a school, not in DC, but in Andover, Mass. And so in Andover, I learned about a whole new set of skills. And I was able to see that there was a brighter future ahead of me. But unfortunately, a lot of kids don't get that opportunity, mainly because their parents don't know or their parents don't think it's worth enforcing it in them, or maybe they just don't see it happening around them. And so to be able to provide internships and opportunities for people who were like me and who are like me to see that there are people and that you can easily be in a high place with any talent you possess. And I think advertisement and marketing can do that because marketing is about math. So if you're good at math, you can do some math work. If you're good at public speaking, you can advertise, you can recruit clients, you can do a bunch of stuff like that. If you're good at visual arts, there's graphic design, marketing and advertisement is such a broad world that anyone can really be able to be successful in that field. And so I just want to be able to help those because there's a lot of passion in me about that because it's so unfair that people who were just born in these conditions and born in situations where they weren't allowed to originally succeed, for them to still not be able to have an opportunity to succeed, it's detrimental and it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I still will never understand why there's such a big hatred towards those who are formerly incarcerated. And it's not like there aren't ways to work around, working with, like, some people might get nervous, okay, this person's been in prison. But there's ways to work around that. You can easily do graphic design virtually, especially in like prison courses. So, like a thought I had the other day as well was there's college students, right, who are often looking for opportunities to really talk and share their knowledge, and they're learning in college just as well. And there's also college jobs. So maybe we could have college students filming tutorials on how to graphic design or, doing something like that where they're working within the community. And then those virtual classes can then be streamed to prisons or, recorded and then sent to prison facilities so that they can offer courses so that people are not only coming out with a skill set, but coming out with the idea that there is a chance for them to be able to work in the future.
This is
Um,
so huge. I remember something you said. I wrote it down. I carry this little notebook around with me everywhere I go, and poor Kiara, she had me writing like a real reporter right in front of her as we sat on that stoop. You said something really important that stuck with me. You said incarceration is like being in a coma for 4, 6, 10, 20 years, and
Well,
when you come out, everything has changed.
well,
Community, status, tech, social constructs, and it's like you know nothing.
that's
That,
exactly how it is.
yeah. And we scratch our heads and wonder why folks just get back into the same things that got them in trouble in the first place. What you're talking about, this big idea, makes so much sense from all the angles that you're looking at. But I think what I really loved was some of the observations about you made about how you got lucky. I mean,
And
you made your own luck, and you said some things to me about how you're always, since you were a little kid, you were always showing up for yourself.
well,
Talk to us about your childhood, how you wound up in Andover and all that, because it really is a beautiful example of showing up for yourself.
yes. So I'm an only child, right? So it's just my mom and my grandparents. And usually, like, I'm always having, because my mom's busy, like, she's one person trying to take care of a household. And as much as she puts effort into me, she pours a lot into me. And I will say that I've often always was taught to show up for myself because I can't always count on the next man to be there for me. So showing up for myself means looking at what is out there for me to do. So in middle school is when I've heard about this program called the Better Chance program. And so that's how I ended up, taking the PSAT, test. There's a bunch of tests. You had to do interviews, the whole big process of going to high school. Now, I thought this didn't happen until college, but a lot of people put it into like high school. So I did the Better Chance program and I got in, I got accepted, and you fill out an application, and this gets sent to multiple schools. So I ended up at Andover High School, which is in Andover, Massachusetts, which is not too far outside of Boston.
Yeah.
So what the situation is, just to keep it simple, it was a community boarding school. So I was in a house. It was me and 7 other girls, so 8 of us total, 2 per grade. And we attended the local public school, Andover High School. Now you may be wondering, why did you leave home to go to another public school? But the issue is that DC public schools are not that great in terms of, for one, opportunity, and for two, safety. In Andover, I was surprised. The first thing I did was walk downtown by myself. Like I felt like free and safe. And in the education system, there was a lot of people. They had social workers in school. I didn't even know what a social worker was doing in school. I was surprised that that was even a thing. They offered therapy, they offered, support. There were people, adults were caring about you and pouring into you. And there is when I had to learn work life balance because, like, showing up for yourself often means taking a lot of opportunities. When there was a lot of opportunities presented, I wanted to take and use and be for all of them. And so I had to learn how to balance myself. And that taught me maturity that I didn't know I needed, but I was definitely ready for. And so just, as a being a only child of a single mother, it's a really hard thing as well because you're her only child. So everything surrounds every fear, every past experience surrounds how you were raised, which is often why I'm always in a positive mood. I try to stay in a positive light because I know that there's a lot of things to fear in the world. I know there's a lot of negatives in the world, but I can't push out a positive message if I'm always thinking negatively. So, I always try to stay on that positive and high wavelength because in order to do that, you have to be in a good mood in order to take good and give good as well. So, it's just all about, seeing opportunities and taking them and not being afraid to stray away from the norm. I think it was nerve wracking for me to even think about doing this program because people in middle school were like, why are you going away? Why are you doing this? That's weird. That's that. And then my mom also faced a lot of backlash as well from people in the church community or just people in our community. They were like, "Ugh," like I would never send my child away. She didn't send me away because I needed to be sent away. I wanted to go away. She knew that it was best for me to go away. She sacrificed to allow me to go away so that I can blossom into a better person. And I feel like that's just a lot of things with parenting as well, is that you have to let go a little bit to allow you to fly, like how birds, their child just comes out of the nest and like learns how to fly that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate my mom for sacrificing and letting me go and fly, in Andover and learn all these cool skills.
Wow. That's such a great story. I got goosebumps a few times when you were saying certain things. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more from Kiarra about these wonderful perspectives that life has taught her and that she's going to, I'm sure, make the most of. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So, if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Our subscription model is a pay-what-you-can model so that everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics and no ads for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. All right, we're back with Kiarra Danielle Lucas, my new favorite freshman college student in the world. So, Kiarra, okay, one of the things that you talked with me about was this way that you've taken advantage of every opportunity that came your way. And you mentioned that there's a kind of a work-life balance in that, even for a seventh grader. Um, that is so wise of you. I mean, you're it's almost like you're creating your own conspiracy of goodness.
Mhm.
That so do you have any stories where, because this happens in all our lives, where
Really?
you might have turned left but instead you turned right and it opened up a different landscape for you?
Yes, for sure. So funny thing, I don't want to admit this, but at the event funny thing is I was literally planning to leave because like I was like, I don't know if I should be here. Like I was very nervous talking to people. So I was like, maybe I should just go call it a day or whatever. And then I had a conversation with you and I was like, wait, this is actually really cool. And there's a lot of cool people here. So that definitely broke me out of my shell. So that's one a recent example. There's a lot of different examples, I think, for me about like turning. The only thing is it's hard for me to remember because I always remember the goodness that comes out of it. But I think there were a lot of times where, for example, in the program I was in, it was during COVID and I had issues with getting my work done and just like I was struggling. To be honest, I feel like a lot of children and a lot of people in that time were struggling. But for me, I fell behind academically And then it kind of dwindled into mentally, like I was just stressed constantly. And so the program I was in had certain policies and things that were put in place that were kind of old. But this time, I was struggling. I was like, this policy isn't going to work. It's not working for me. It's not going to be conducive to me being progressive in my work. It's not gonna it's not gonna work for me to move forward.
Mhm.
So in that, I was able to allow the program to realize how antiquated their policies were, and they were able to change it. So that way it's more accessible for students because we're human, especially in high school, especially our first and second years, we're still navigating, the high school experience. So I was able to help inspire them to change, some policies and making updates and, making new waves and really thinking about us more as humans than just academic, machines. Because that's often what high schools try to portray is that we're just supposed to get all A's so we can go to college, But, there's a lot more to a person than producing a grade. So,
Yeah, and you described some things in that public school in Andover that you got exposure to that you wouldn't have gotten exposure.
yeah,
That's something that kind of hurt my heart. You have to have walked in somebody's shoes like you to really understand the disparity between a public high school in Andover and a public high school in Washington D.C. And that's a shame in our nation's capital.
yeah.
Because the way you described it, there's this zone where everything's all polished in white marble, and then just outside that, talk to us about those differences and what we need to know.
Yeah, so I'll say this. DC has a lot of work to do for their residents, especially those born and raised there, especially the youth there,
Yeah.
especially the children that are going into these high schools in DC. There's this whole thought that we're doing activism and we're trying to get into the neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, the problem isn't getting solved.
Mm.
Kids are still dying. My mom's still nervous texting me, like, hey, are you okay? Like, it's because she's hearing stories of these kids dying and these kids doing this. There's a lot of issues with gun violence in DC, and I don't know, it's not as publicized as it should be. It's in local news, but that's because we know about it. We're in there, but we literally have access to a bunch of governmental officials, and nothing is being done. So,
Mm.
like, no one is really taking the time to come into these neighborhoods. Like my grandmother's neighbor, like they ended up, dealing with gun violence issues on both sides of their house. So there's like an alley and there's a house there, and then there's a house, my grandmother's house, and there's another house there. And they both had issues with gun violence and losing children, at young ages, teenage ages. In Southeast DC has it the worst. And some people hear about it here and there, but I don't think people understand the intensity. When I was in Andover, I'm not worried about, there being like shootings and like me accidentally getting caught in a crossfire. I'm not scared to walk. I'm still not going to walk at night anywhere, but, it's less scary, to walk at night in Andover. And there was a lot of opportunities where they have community meetings, like I was able to speak about a textbook situation at at the town of Andover's community meeting. My voice was heard, and in that town, I was able to speak with my teachers who had connections to people in Andover, so there was a lot of camaraderie, I think, in community in Andover. And granted, Andover's not the most diverse, but at least they tried to take strides to make me feel comfortable and it is hard to find the balance between overdoing it and not doing enough. But at the end of the day, most people that I encountered there, their intentions were to be pure and to be helpful. And so to hear that adults and hear that officials and to hear that teachers and principals cared about what I thought and actually were taking, strides to do something about, the issues happening in the community, it made me feel like, why is it so hard for places like DC to do this? Especially with there's more officials and there's more people there. And I saw that a lot. Like I was able to do a lot of cool things that like I did equestrian like once a month I had a host family. So, I got to learn how to do like ride horses and all the fun stuff like that. And the town just really does a lot. And they have their own DEI committee
Mm.
that did a lot of events for diversity, equity, and inclusion because they're taking strides to increase their understanding of diversity. And that's well, that was an issue, and kind of probably still is an issue in Andover, was not understanding diversity, but see how they took the steps to listen. Like the youth are running, there's youth officials in the DEI committee in that town. So there are youth that have their voice being put in. And I know a lot of youth probably feel like this, but we often feel like our voices aren't as important as adults because we're often seen as like, oh, whatever, it's just a child, like they don't know. But to hear that people actually want to hear us, it invokes us to want to put in more effort into our thoughts and not just doing things, here and there because it's the wind and flow of everything. But because people are actually listening, we want to put more effort. We want to impress the adults. That's the thing. We look up to most of the older people in our lives. So we're going to put effort into wanting to produce greatness for you all and greatness for us and our generation as well. But we can't do that if we feel like we're being shut out. So
That
that's
is that is such a great way to say it. I just got goosebumps again.
yeah.
All right, you got me ready to vote for you for president right now. Okay, we've talked about how fear kind of weaves in and out of your way of thinking, and I'm sure love does too. It must feel like almost like a game that you have to play between acting out of fear or acting out of love.
Yeah. So I think for me, acting out of love is just so natural for me. I've always been an affectionate person. Like I was talking about this the other day with a friend. Like if you have established yourself as my friend, I will do everything I can to support you
Mm,
in everything that you do. And I feel like when someone pours love into you, like okay, so for example, like say I have a friend who loves to do art or whatever, and I'm like, okay, so you like to do art. I love that for you. Now let's see, like I'm looking for opportunities for you. Like I'm doing something. Oh, if they have an art like innovation conversation. Oh, you want to come? So like acting out of love, like I love that for you. You love to do this. Okay, here's a good opportunity for you to work. Whereas fear of that is like, oh, I don't think you should put all your eggs into art. Like art might not be the right choice for you. Maybe also look at math, also look at this, Acting out of fear, it hinders the ability to grow because it's like cutting down a tree, chopping a tree down, and not necessarily allowing it to grow and seeing what it could be. It's kind of like not allowing things to blossom,
mhm.
not allowing the seedling to make it to the full stage.
Right.
And I feel like acting out of love it is actually more natural than a lot of people think. Because when you have that fear, it's also because you love that person or you love that idea
Mhm,
that you're wanting to protect it and not allow anything to happen to it. So sometimes it is hard to act out of love and, make decisions out of love and,
mhm,
pour love into someone when you also want them to be safe, especially like for your child. Like I know it's like you're just fearful. You don't want the world to do anything to them. But at the end of the day, like allowing that person to nurture and grow allows them to also feel strong, and it also builds up their strength to fight the things you may be afraid that they're going to do. Because if you don't allow them to at least face it or know about it, like how are they going to know that it's there to even, be able to fight it and
mhm.
face it? So having fear is just more of a hindrance than anything.
Now, you said something there that I'm reminded of. I interviewed this 17-year-old who's just the genius kid at the University of Illinois. And he has quite a life story as well. And he once said to me something that sticks in my mind and kind of comes back to what you just said. He says, I try hard not to take the advice of my parents. But then he explained, he said, I find that the people that love me the most don't want me to take any risk at all. They
Yeah.
want me to make all the safest possible choices. And so
Mhm.
their advice usually isn't that good.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening with the good people you left behind in DC, or that that are still in your life, but you left DC at quite a young age? Were
Yeah. It's
they
like,
always wanting you to take less riskier paths?
yes. So for sure, especially socially, I think, especially my mother as well, because in the news, it's all just negative stuff. So
Mhm.
it's always like this girl got kidnapped this way, someone got shot that way, there's like this emergency this way, that
Right.
way, and she's always calling me like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, what are you doing? Don't go anywhere. Like, and I feel like Especially like I said before, like she's a single mom, so I'm her only child as well. It's like it's not like she has multiple children that she has to worry about. It's just me and it's just her. So I feel like there are a lot of times where her advice can seem kind of reformed in a sense that like she doesn't want to, nudge me into a direction that could possibly be dangerous. She encourages me to do some things, but she's still very reluctant about it, which still gets and I get to my head a little bit like, oh my gosh, should I like be wary about this or should I be wary about that? And like I said, like when you are putting fear into something, it's because you love it so much. So I understand, but I have to try this at some point, might as well, try it while I'm able to learn and fail and still be okay. Not, way in my future where, if I fail and learn this lesson now, then I'm kind of a little bit behind. So,
It's very
yeah.
savvy of you. Yeah. Because the stakes are low. Usually, I mean, where you're at right now, the stakes are pretty low to try an adventure to a innovation event
Yeah.
or something like that, right? And or this kind of an interaction. Okay, so though you are reminding me, I bet you have somebody with like an original story of crazy big courage in your background.
Yeah, so it's definitely in the two women in my life, of course, my mother and my grandmother. So I'll talk about my grandmother for a little bit. My
Mhm.
grandmother was originally from South Carolina, Anderson, South Carolina, where, she had two brothers and all of that. And she came to DC for work. And she originally was working in the courthouse in the daycare center. But then she moved to working in the flower business in someone else's flower shop. So then I think is only a little bit older than me, so maybe like 18 to like 19 years ago, she started her own flower shop called Petals, Ribbons, and Beyond, which is now she's now retired, but that was her own flower shop. It was on 12th Street Northeast in DC, of course, and it was a lovely flower shop. That's where I took my first steps, apparently. Like, I grew up there. And her courage to deal with she has to deal with a lot of different things, owning a business for one and having it be successful for so long. Like, you always hear about small businesses not lasting that long, but this became a big business in the name of Northeast DC. And this, they call it the town of Brookland, not Brooklyn, but Brookland. So she became like the flower shop in that town. And every day I was at her shop and I just watched her deal with employees to customers to landlords, just lots of different people. And customers can get egregious at times and it can be hard to work in customer service. So to see her just take every day with like, strong and just powering through everything she had to do, it just was incredible to see. And to be around. And for my mother, she's always just trying to, figure it out. There's a lot of things about life that you have to figure out. And she has worked in schools. She's now a tour guide for DC and she's also doing tutoring. But she has figured out whenever we're in a hard situation, like, say, for instance, like money's low or something, she's always like, we talk, she's my mom. So we're like close, like really best friends. And she'll tell me like, oh, I'm struggling. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And every time she would say that, I would like, you always figure it out though. Like, for some reason, magically, she's just always figured it out. She makes sacrifices. She takes up a new job. She takes all this stress, but somehow she still figures it out. And I still don't know how she does it because I get usually freeze in like tough situations, but my mother's courage and strength has showed me that like no matter what situation you put yourself in, you can always figure it out. And it takes some tears and it takes some frustrations, but you always can you just figure it out. And hopefully, like, I grow up to learn because they're owning a business is a lot and hiring and all of that is a lot. So when I'm trying to work towards my goal, I hope I can just figure it out like she does and take her strength and my grandmother's courage and combine those two lovely people together and just produce something greater of the two. Yeah.
That is just absolutely lovely. Sometimes when you look at the news or you see, adults not acting with their best selves forward or, just when the world seems so crazy, do you
Yeah.
ever put your hands on your head and just think, here's what I really wish people knew. Is there
Yeah.
anything you really wish people knew, Kiarra?
I really wish people knew that our generation, we're doing some amazing work. Whether we share it or not, we're doing some great things. Like the conversations I'm having with just meeting people here at the college, it's my first month here. So I'm still meeting a lot of new people, but so many people want to change the world. And so many people are actively putting in effort to change the world. A lot of people are like, this generation that, generalizing our generation, but I wish people knew that we are out here making changes, making moves, working to make moves, and we're doing it with a fresh heart and a non-judgmental heart. One thing to learn about this generation is that we don't judge. Like, do what you want to do. Get where you want to go, how you want to get there. If you want to go on a pogo stick downtown, that's fine. But as long as you're working towards goodness, then that's all that matters. And that's really what, at least the people I've met in my generation, are about. We're all about working towards goodness, working towards making strides, working towards changing the world for the better. And we realize the wrong, and we're not just realizing it, but we're acting upon it and doing something about it. And that's the thing I love about our generation, is that we're using all the platforms like the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Snapchats. Like someone's putting goodness into that from our generation. And it may seem all bad sometimes because that's all people talk about because it gets the views and it gets the streams or whatever. But there's so much goodness going into a lot of our platforms, and a lot of us who just still want to take the college route, not just want to do something right away, but are still taking the efforts to learn the skills and gain the knowledge so that when we get all the stuff we want or need, we're ready to attack the world. Yeah.
I have thought that for a long time. Your generation harkens back to a generation four generations ago that was the generation that was called the compromisers, who
Wolf.
did bring us out of World War One, who did make a lot of steps forward and leaps of human potential by their good nature and by their good intentions. So I totally agree with you. And the news or social media does not represent your generation fairly. Gosh, you guys are aspirational. And
Wolf.
that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because I know that you would not, I wouldn't let you speak for your entire generation, but I think you're a great representative of so many great thinkers about what's possible that I've met in your generation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, you know, if we want to wrap up here, what do you think has to happen next? Let's first start with your particular dream of working with folks that are just coming out of an incarceration experience. What has to happen in a world to make that a possibility?
Yeah. So I think big picture, we just have to care, like the world just has to care about the situations that those formerly incarcerated are in, and at least draw attention to it and pay attention to it and actually go into these prisons, because we know there's an issue with the prison system. Like that's a no brainer. But what are we doing about it? Like starting with improving the conditions of the prison so that people aren't going insane in there and are wanting to feel encouraged to make better for the world. And I think that's where the world can just change its mindset, is the big scope that I really wish people could do. And then for the youth, I think in general, just removing the amount of accessibility to weapons and guns, first of all, in these neighborhoods to begin with, just getting rid of the weapon and then talking to the children, because a lot of children deal with a lot of trauma, and I think also a lot of social pressure. So trauma and social pressure together, like one of the kids at the camp was like, "Yeah, I have to be this way because that's how everyone else is. Like I have to be that way." But removing that social pressure and asking them why they're angry, why are you upset, what is going on, and making it known that they can share their frustrations with others and that they can trust people, but also just trust that everything will be okay and you don't have to live this way just because it's happening all around you. So just removing the weapons and digging into the situation and to the people who are dealing with these issues, and talking to families, I feel like offering more parenting, like maybe parenting sessions where other parents can just get together and just figure out like what's not working, what is working, because a lot of these children are left astray, but a lot of these parents are also just don't know what to do when they're raising the child in this world where it's like you got to dodge bullets and dodge this, dodge that. A lot of parents are just lost because there's
Mhm.
no book on how to be a parent.
No.
So there's no way to really, fix it. So just digging into these people as a whole and just figuring it
Mm,
out on a
lovely.
grander scope.
That's a lovely vision, Kiara. And how about you? Like, I suspect that there will be people who are listening to this interview who want to support you.
Yeah.
I mean, on your journey, who knows where that will land, but you've given me goosebumps about 10 times now. And I know there will be folks who want to do whatever they can to help you on your journey. Where can they reach you?
Yes. So right now I'm mainly on email, and then via email, it just reach out to me and say like I'm interested in what you're doing or I want to support what you're doing. The email for that is Kiarra, so Kiarra, and then dot Lucas Lucas at gmail.com. So that is my direct email. So through there, you can say I'm just interested in your story, or like I want updates, or I want to support you. And I'm working on I'm doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff first. So like just building up a concrete idea. So then that way, like if you want to support financially, like I'll start setting up GoFundMe's and like start actually trying to take trips to prisons or trying to figure out how to get my way into understanding all of these ideas and just, thinking about all of those things like that and maybe starting a website and all of that just to give people more information, just knowledge on the issues in the prison system to at least just get going.
Well, I want to make a call out to anybody whose ears this interview falls on about actually taking Kara up on this. I think, too, just so you know what's a spam email and what's a good email, like she said, put in the subject box, I'm interested in supporting you. Or even if they mention the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, I
So
heard you on the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, that can be a little signal to Kiara that it's somebody with really good intention who might help her in any kind of ways. And I want to see you be successful, my friend. So I'm going to be in your court too for a long time.
thank you.
Okay, so we are going to wrap up today, but I can't thank you enough, Kiarra Danielle Lucas, for bringing your light to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. You are why I do this. You're why everybody at the Goodness Exchange is trying to shine a light on what's right with the world, is because we need to create the best world we can for people with your kind of aspirations. In just a few years, you'll be leading something wonderful, I'm quite sure. So I hope this conversation will help all our listeners and viewers on their week, and we put a spring in your step just knowing of someone like Kiarra. And please support us at the Goodness Exchange. Check out our YouTube channel. This interview and all the others will be on the Goodness Exchange YouTube channel. Have a great day, and thank you all for joining us at the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast.